Hello members of the internet and welcome to this video where I'll be attempting to build a sports version of what, well, already looks like a sports car. Looks like a vaguely Citroenified Dodge Viper, it's probably the best way to describe it. I did build this before in a previous video and I forced myself to use an engine that was in a saloon car, as you would. But the intention now is to turn this into a higher performance car, so the 170 horsepower will have to be changed for something higher, but first we do have to do perhaps the obvious of lowering it and sticking it on larger wheels, of which we will do first and then lower it. Ooh, do we want 20s? 20s are pretty huge, 18s are large as they are, but when it's lowered it'll only ask for bigger wheels. 19s look pretty good, indeed they do, and I think if I go here, we're going to basicify the interior. This is going to be the sport version of an already sporty car, so, you know, we're going to take that comfort suspension, I will admit that much, but we're going to take that and we're going to give it sport suspension, and already it's looking a bit more like a sports car. These lip thing, would you call it a lip? It's just too low overall, but there's nothing I can really do about it. Headlights have got angry. They tend to get angry. I'll probably have to re-add them, to be entirely honest. The tyres, I'm unlikely to make them wider though. They're more likely to be different variants. If I go here, hopefully I can... No, not on this menu. This one, hopefully I can reposition them. I don't know. They're fine. They've just automatically snapped on. I don't think they were moved at all, to be honest. I think they just adapted to the new bodywork size. Looks like we need more on the rear, although I could be wrong there. But it looks like it needs more wheel arch. Either that or, yeah, less offset. Either of which works fine at what I'm trying to do. I think since I have the bodywork to play with, I'll make the wheels slightly bigger. So if I go 0 there, 0 there, I can probably go with 215s rear and 215s front. Without really endangering it, it's easily got the space to fit these wheels. There we go, like so. But not too wide, eh? And I'm thinking already that is looking better in terms of width. Although 205s aren't too bad for a power we're throwing through the wheels. I may have to go much wider. I keep thinking it's rear wheel drive actually as well, and I've just remembered it's front wheel drive as well. Although it's got torsion beam at the back, which should have made it pretty obvious, but it's front wheel drive, so yeah, I made an odd decision there. The weight balance, though, if we look back here, is actually very front heavy, 65% almost, but that's what you want on a front wheel drive car, because it will translate into very, very good front end grip. For rear end grip, we have a wing, so it shouldn't be too dreadful. We can have medium compound tyres for the time being, maybe even sports compound if it so desires. But medium will work. We can go on, hopefully, the trim. No, I was on the trim, but I went off it. We can go on here. It gives us various wheel options. I don't think we want those. They don't look too bad, but they're not sporty in the way I want them to be. And the rear wheels tend to flicker. Apologies for that. I don't know why. Ooh, they're kind of a sporty versions. I don't quite like them on this car in particular. But what's the alternative? The Z's, I guess. The fact is, they don't have to be made any bigger to look good, and with the tiny amount of ground clearance and tiny amount of travel we've got already in the suspension, I don't think I want to reduce the tyres as well. I can change the fixture year, but I don't see much point. It just restricts my creativity a little too much. We have various suspension types. I'll probably go with adaptive dampers and maybe better sway bars. I'll come back to that. Will I? I don't know. No, semi-active. Throw it on there. So this was, I think, just under $13,000 to begin with. How have I made it cheaper? Come on. This just doesn't feel right at all. So what I've done, I've added bigger... Ah, that's why. 2 seats instead of 4. That's also why it's a bit more front heavy than it was. Should be lighter as well. It was 1120 with 4 seats in the basic infotainment. So we're doing well. For pricing, we're doing very well indeed. Where do I need to look? There we go. 1040. This is a light car now. Not ultra light by any means, but it's getting there. And the engine, it would help if it weren't cast iron, but you know, as I say, it's from a saloon car. We're kind of stuck with that. The only thing we can really change, as far as this goes, is we can make the conrods forged, or perhaps change to 5-valve per cylinder, which is the less realistic option. Since, you know, it gives me a fair boost of power there, but I just don't need it. And why is it saying 155? Have I actually clicked on something? Because it was making 170 horsepower. I'm sure I must have. Either way, this is our car. And we can put a bigger exhaust on. I mean, I remember that was restricting it a little from standard, but I didn't want to modify the engine at all. Whereas here we're finally free to modify. Yeah, I'm sure I've clicked on something though and ruined the engine. Maybe it was 5-valve per cylinder. I don't know. No, VVL, there we go. I've got my power back. It's fine. Nothing to worry about. The VVL is fairly high, but not really high, and indeed it's an engine, what can I say? We've got a 6-speed manual, again, trying to share parts with the saloon. Maybe didn't go the best, but this is what we've got. It is 6.3 to 60. That is really improved actually with the suspension, a lot more than I would have suspected. It's about half a second off, yes, 0.5 seconds. I think here I'm going to stick the huge intercooler on. A ball bearing turbo, obviously. It reduces lag here, as you will see, but I'm pretty sure in the overall scheme of things, the lag will kind of build back, as I am going to go with more boost, hopefully. Ooh, look at that. The engine's failed. As long as they don't push the RPM too high, though, I think it'll take it. Sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but I really think it will. Got really low compression here. Is there anything I can do to kind of balance it out? But still, the curve isn't bad. My mind's struggling to come up with words to describe it, but the curve honestly isn't bad from the engine right now. At this point in time, 6,900. Oh dear. Problem is balancing it all out. I could move the VVL right up, but that would leave me with a really messy power curve. It's a little messy as it is, but it's not so bad. Right, we have a tiny turbo now, and basically what we've done is we've stuck a massive intercooler on it and cranked up the boost. Probably not the best way of getting power through, but I just want to see what I can do, and so far the results are going pretty dreadfully, actually. So, yeah, 12 PSI, and that's gone quite well. Ah, yeah, there we go. Cranking up the boost, and that's given us perhaps too much exhaust size. We don't want a 102mm exhaust on. Just look at how stupid that looks. So I think if I go with a compromise of about 180 horsepower, it'll still leave me with a huge exhaust, but it's a lot less ridiculous than it was before. So, you know, I have to deal with that. Do we want more muffling? No, it's a hardcore track car, but already 10 horsepower more, and I will tweak this a lot more. It's got a lot heavier as well. I think that's largely thanks to the radiator I've added. But 5.8 seconds 0 to 60. We've chopped about an entire second off, actually. We've also lost some miles per gallon. Not as much as I could have lost, but we've lost some miles per gallon. I think we can easily gun for over 200 horsepower in this, though. Because the extra tyres, the upgraded tyre widths, all together, it just works. And it gives this car more of an edge, I feel. In terms of performance, this could be a very quick car in the grand scheme of things, even though it is only front wheel drive and Wow, less than 35% of the weight is at the rear now. I may have to put the rear seats back in just to make this thing reasonably balanced. Or make the engine lighter, which is probably a more reasonable option. Cast iron, ooh. Anyway, I'll return when I have done the engine up as I would intend to do it up. Okay, so I've had the vehicle around the test track, and as you'll see in the thingy here, panel, it's a 2:17.80 time, which is okay, actually not bad for a sports car. Although I would have hoped for better, you know, there's only so much you can do with this old engine. I've got it to 260 horsepower with a huge amount of lag, and yeah, that is a huge amount. But anyway, forget the time, 2:17.8 puts it just below the BSTF, whatever it is, Four-Eyed Tim, which was a crazy front-wheel drive saloon, and the Pluto Advance Inline 4, also the Speedy Me Bob RS, which was the high-performance version of another mid-engined rear-wheel drive sports car, so it's done pretty good there. I mean, it's within 2 seconds of that car, and this is, well, as you can see, a transverse front-wheel drive vehicle. So for a front-wheel drive to fight that well, I think it's done quite well. It is kind of expensive if we look back here. Not as expensive as I remember though, but 13,200. The track premium market love this car, as do the track market. I would say $13,200 doesn't sound like a lot, but I guess it must be if you're looking for a track car, surprisingly. Despite a lot of the back monos and things, they're not exactly in budget segments of the market, so, you know. Still, miles per gallon is excellent as well, 42.7. How I've got that with a 260 horsepower engine, I don't know. It's not even that light. It's about 34-ish kilograms lighter than before. I think I've lost the panel completely. But yeah, 1086, so 34 kilos lighter than it was before. There or thereabouts, and that is not a lot considering you lose 2 seats and you have to put with a lot stiffer suspension, but you do get a huge amount of power, so that at least kind of makes it forgivable in that respect. There is only 34% of the weight over the rear wheels, which is not great, but you know, I think it's just gone a bit too far personally in terms of how much is over the front, but it translates into performance, as we were saying. And as I was saying, it's also above the glued banana. I can't recall what car that was. Ah, yeah, that was kind of a weird front-wheel drive U. I believe it actually had about 260 horsepower, believe it or not. And a transverse front-wheel drive layout. So, you know, we're not doing the worst that we could be doing. This is also heavier, I think, as far as I remember that thing. We've beaten the standard Speedy Me Bob. We've beaten the Retro Me Bob V8, an old 80s supercar. This is against some good competition, considering the engine is basically an old K-series with loads of parts thrown at it. I don't think we've done too bad. It's direct injection, as you can tell down here. I've not actually needed the performance intake. I did try it once and it didn't make much difference. I see there now, actually. I probably should have put it on when I did the lap times. But, you know, it's a bit late for that. It makes 260. I'm happy with it. Ignition timing is quite high. I could do all this fine-tuning a bit more, but I can't be bothered. I mean, the engine was just destroying itself constantly and going into a different configuration. So the fact that I managed to get it stable at 260 is good enough for me. We've got about 15 PSI, a bigger turbo, a bigger intercooler, and a ball bearing turbo as well, instead of a journal bearing one. There you go, you'll see it's got a huge exhaust on this, but it's actually a bigger turbo, so it should be able to support the exhaust pipe, where the mount should be attached to a bigger turbo, which won't kind of fall apart under all the pressure, so I hope at least. The large intercooler there we go. And it's a heavier engine because of all that stuff. There's not really a way to avoid it, especially when we're not making it aluminium or anything. And doing that would basically render the engine useless, because if it's tested as a cast iron lump, it'll be kind of pointless trying to make it work as an aluminium lump. You would be changing so much about it that in reality it would require redevelopment, I believe, and Not in automation, no, but I believe in reality if you did just change it all to aluminium, there's different frictions of the metal and everything, so it wouldn't just work. It could never just work perfectly with no change at all. Even if it's only small change, there will definitely be a way in changing how it works. And for some reason, I'm not seeing what I wanted to see. I don't know, I think it's power and torque, but for some reason my mind didn't register that part of the graph at the very top was there. All cast iron internals, all this stuff is the same. But as you'll see, the weather limit has increased to 8,500, nerve-wrackingly close to the 8,600. That is the very, very limit that it can actually rev to before the engine starts collapsing. So I just got lucky there. If you look at the performance index, top left corner, or just below that point, you'll see I kind of got lucky at 8,500 and that it just didn't want to rev higher than that. At least not with the way the engine is currently set up. I'll let you hear it. I might as well. Huge amount of lag, as you can hear. It gets quite aggressive on the top end, I'll say that now. Considering this is old cast iron stuff, you wouldn't think it would take much stress, but no, it's really aggressive up there. Anyway, it does 0 to 62 in 5.2 seconds, who can complain about that? And we have a geared limited slip differential, which was in here when I found the car, basically, so I'm keeping it that way. Brakes are where it gets interesting. I actually went with smaller vented discs, I believe, slightly smaller than I had before, but I've increased the number of pistons, as that worked quite well. It might have made them more expensive, but, you know, it seemed like the right thing to do in order to gain performance, just even not huge brakes. Thing is, the brakes add weight. Carbon ceramics I don't believe are so bad, but when I'm using vented discs in order to try and keep the price somewhat reasonable, boy do they add weight, because they are still metal discs, remember. And when you start making them larger, they add weight, so pads are a good option there. I've not gone with a downforce undertray. I didn't feel it necessary since it is just a front-wheel drive car. I've not got rear-wheel drive and all the complexities of that to deal with. All this stuff you saw me change, I believe, so I don't need to go into too much detail. Sport suspension. Actually, with the wheels and the overall alignment, that is the only thing that I have to go through. There is kind of a rim offset on the rear, but other than that, it is basically 235s all around and blind hope to pull you around a corner. Medium compound 235s as well. I tried 195 sports compound and it seemed 235 on medium compound was a good overall balance for what I was going for with this car. So that's just what I settled with. And that's all I've got to talk about, really. It's under 1,100 kilos, so light but not super light. And we've got markets. I can change the values again, 13,200. And it fits well into premium track. I've gone through that. But, you know, I think it's time to leave it here for today. You know, we beat a few decent vehicles with it. It has pushed ahead to get a good time. And I'm proud of it. So I have to leave it here, as I say, and say goodbye until another day.